Good morning, everyone. We are live. I was just talking to Sheree and Matt, and we should be having Zac join us shortly. So while we have some attendees, and it looks like they're still coming in right now, beautiful, we're going to start to get the housekeeping stuff and the introductions out of the way so we can just jump right in. So with that, ladies first, if you want to start, Sheree, and then go to Matt, and then hopefully by then Zac jumps in and we'll get it rolling. So please take it from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, guys. I'm Sheree Toms. I am a transition specialist in Bossier Parish Schools in Louisiana, specifically working with pre-employment transition services within the classrooms.
All right. My name is Matt Watson, and I work with Sheree as well in Bossier Parish Schools, and I serve as our transition coordinator and try to help connect all of our kids to all the transition, post-secondary, any of the options we have in the school system, just anything transition related. That's our realm. That's what we work with, and that's what we're kind of dedicated to.
Love it. Thank you. And Zac Burson, he was just calling Matt like a minute before. He'll be on. He was having some technical difficulties, but he'll be on shortly here, hopefully. But my name's Art Janowiak. Some of you may know me from Conover webinars previously, but I'll be the moderator. My hope is that I talk less than these two and then Zac, but we'll see. If you ask my wife, maybe not, but we're going to jump into the slideshow. But before we begin, let's see where you all are coming from. I know I was checking the attendee list before. I had some people from Iowa, California, New York, North Carolina. So just dump in the chat where you're coming from and maybe your role, just to give some context to Sheree and Matt. I want to make sure that they kind of see too where you all are coming from. And like I said, I'll share my screen and we'll get some housekeeping things out of the way while you do that. Housekeeping. I will send tomorrow the replay of this. There'll be some video controls too. Someone asked, hey, can I fast forward if I can only attend like 20 minutes of this? Yes. You're going to get a replay link tomorrow with the slides. You're going to get a link to the replay with the videos that you can just slide ahead to where you were if you have to leave early. So no worries there. I'm trying to think what else. There's one more thing on my list and I just forgot it. But those are the two big ones, is you'll get a replay. And then any contact information too will be in there as well to contact these folks as well as myself and go from there. So good. Where we got? Michigan, North Carolina, Pre-ETS coordinator. Awesome. We have, and by the way, Matt and Sheree on the right, if you hit chat, you're going to see all this coming through too. Great. Pike County, Kentucky. Yeah, we got a lot of people in Eastern Kentucky I saw too, which we have some school districts, some counties there. So that's awesome. So we'll see some of those. We got West Virginia in the house. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's share the screen. Let's get moving. Window. And I think we should be good. And our faces will be in the bottom right, so it's more of the slides there. But again, the hope is that as we do this presentation, I'm going to go through the slides somewhat quickly. Some people say, hey, you're going too fast, or hey, I need to see. That's why we have the replay. That's why we send the slides, especially as Bossier and Matt and Sheree start talking, and then Zac, even with his experience connecting folks to the community, and then the VR world, VR land. We may skip some things. We may kind of go quickly, but you can look at the slides and see that context too in the replay. So just know that as we go through. But the whole purpose and the whole goal here is to add the value of, hey, how do we best serve individuals with disabilities, whether it's in IDEAs, K-12, or VR Pre-ETS? And how do we get those individuals prepared for the workforce? Part of that is going to be using Conover Online, but part of that also is outside of our tools. It's leveraging that tool to say, all right, by looking at this behavior rating or this student's interest inventory or this student's soft skills assessment, how do we then best get this student in a situation to succeed? So that's the goal, right? So the first 10 or so minutes is going to be kind of giving an overview. A lot of people in here have access to our tools already. Some don't. But the vast majority do. So I'm going to go through kind of our tools as an overview. I want to share those resources as well. But then I'm also going to just pass it along to Matt and Sheree. And there is Zac. Perfect timing. And so beautiful. And I don't mean that just on a whim, like perfect timing. I'm explaining the layout. But we're going to jump into Bossier in Louisiana and what they all are doing in Northwest Louisiana that has been so successful. We were at a conference, the DCDT conference, which is a national transition conference that moves around every year. And we went to Chantilly, Virginia, and shared a little bit of this presentation there. And the setup and layout of Bossier is like of the 1% based on some of the feedback there as far as the structure and how Pre-ETS is designed. So again, I'll let them speak to that, but I'm real excited for them to share those. With that, and while I take a sip of my coffee, Zac, if you want to do an introduction of your experience and what you're about, and then I'll loop into Conover Online.
Sure. Thank you. I had to use all my tech skills and 3 different devices there, so sorry about that. I am in Northwest Louisiana, have been working with Matt and Sheree and other staff in Bossier Parish Schools in transition for over 18 years and have been in education for 35 years in various capacities. And so we're really excited to having had such a good experience with Conover over the years on the technology end and on the best practice side of transition planning. And we're always very excited to see their willingness to think about how to make things easier for practitioners and how to keep up with best practice. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be here with Matt and Sheree and Art.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Zac. Yeah, true collaboration. I love it. All right, so with that, and for those of you joining late, real quick recap. You're going to get a replay. You're going to get these slides. And then also another question that came through was, hey, how long is this going to be? We're going to have about 45, 50 minutes and then 10 minutes of Q&A near the end. So no questions. We're done. Questions, we'll kind of stick it out and go throughout. So, all right, with that. So to kind of explain the Conover journey, both as a company and then how we built our products, is we kind of see life as a road, right? A map. And which direction you take, which is the pivot points in your life, are going to obviously be the next step for where you're going to go. Both, everybody we talk to, but especially individuals with disabilities as they journey through their academic career, their life, right? If they graduate and age out of services at 22, or if you're in Michigan, which I saw someone here from Michigan, right? That's 26. So that's 4 extra years of services, and how that looks with VR is going to look very different than other states. But how we've mapped it out is, as you see from this picture here, this slide, is we first want to start with independent living skills. We want to have this baseline of things like personal hygiene, safety, social cues, community signs, words, and all of these independent living skills aren't focused on the academics, not because they're not important, but rather they're focused on the practical application of the skill for independence. So when we talk about math, for example, it's not going to be 2 + 2. It's going to be more like money and coin identification and making change and how to budget. Because wouldn't it be ideal to have someone live in an apartment and pay rent and have these things and understand how that works? When we go through career exploration, we have an idea of academics for sure, but it's going to be focused more on the interests and then a person's math and reading and science specific to a job. So now we're talking about, hey, I want to do food service or vet tech or you name it, any career. What is the math, or mechanic or cosmetology? You're driving truck. What is the math related to cosmetology specifically? What is the reading specific to food service? And so that way it helps plan out post-secondary goals and then courses of study leading up to those goals. So it helps them set and chart that career plan. And again, that's indicative of the academic journey, but it's all tied back to their interests and their abilities, strengths and weaknesses. And then finally, as we progress through this journey, we're talking about social emotional learning. So we have some independent living skills. We have our career or potential, interests and identification for a career path that I want to do post high school. What about how do I look someone in the eyes? How do I understand how to stand the correct distance apart? How do I communicate or handle criticism or feedback? The basics all the way to the more in-depth social skills. So that's where all that blue section comes in on the journey there. And so there's two versions of each one of these two, which is great. There's a diploma track and a non-diploma track. And the idea is if we have students who are on the diploma track, then we're going to have them go through the standard version. If we have students who are more certificate bound, and again, just to call out, I know there are different terms for different states as far as the different tracks and different things and different. So bear with me too as I kind of jump between jargon because, working across the country, there's different, saying one thing and I mean the other. So bear with me. But the standard version and the adapted version are designed for like a diploma and a non-diploma track, a certificate track. In like North Carolina, they call it the OCS, right? The Occupational Course of Study. So there's different terminologies here. Michigan, I believe there's a certificate track. So that's the design is we want to make sure we're covering the same competencies and having the same product, but it's going to be obviously designed for more of students with cognitive disabilities, lower reading level, lower comprehension, things of that nature. So we could still target those things, but at a more appropriate level. And so for some of these, what I'm going to do is I just want to give some examples. And so I'm hopeful I can share this. So when we talk about independent living, here we go. Let me share off and then on. So things like survival signs and words. And again, I'm not going to show everything for the sake of time. And also many of you are customers. You may have seen this, but some don't. So I want to just kind of share the concepts. But what we do is we have 3,500 videos breaking down these types of concepts. And so you can't hear the sound, but there's full audio here to read everything aloud. There's closed captioning for non-readers. There's switch access for individuals with a switch device. So the idea is that we go through not only the content and the curriculum of survival signs and words, money identification, certain social skills, nouns, verbs, core vocabulary, things like that. But we're also going to have assessments with audio and visual discrimination. So we can check for understanding. So if we go through that same survival signs and words unit, we're going to hear, hey, when you hear the correct sign, click the mouse. And we're going to have some distractors and then the correct answer. So all the meanwhile, from the practitioner hat or the practitioner lens, the idea is we want to track automatically things like time on task, whether it was correct or not, how many attempts it took, which one was correct, the audio or the visual discrimination. And then we have the ability to review. And so all of these things are tracked automatically. So from that practitioner lens, you get the report that says, yep, Art went through this January 29th, 10:15 a.m. Central. Took him 23 minutes. He got these right, these wrong. Boom. Incorporate that into the IEP and the discussion with a caregiver with the IEP meeting. So that's one section there. The other sections, when we talk about this, is going to be focused on career exploration. So we're going to have an interest inventory. We're going to have these hands-on work samples. So these are literal physical manipulatives. And let me share my screen. Sorry, now I'm having some technical difficulties. There we go. So I'll back up. Interest inventory, physical items. And the idea with this, I saw someone in here saying work-based learning coordinator. I think, Joan, you said work-based learning coordinator. So a lot of these are done in situations in the CTE world for work-based learning, but also the special ed world before we do pre-employment stuff, before we do on-the-job internships, community-based employment. Do they even like it? a lot of kids, the best story I have of these work samples is it was a special education teacher in Texas. And she told me one of the kits is horticulture. And she was telling a story about this student she had that wanted to do farming. And what ended up happening was he did the horticulture work sample of mixing high porosity soil and testing pH, and turned to the teacher and was like, I don't like dirt under my fingernails. And that alleviated a lot of pressure for getting that kid into farming, because there's gonna be a lot of dirt under the fingernails and much more, arguably worse, right, than dirt. So it was such a great opportunity for the student to explore these things in a non-threatening atmosphere with these work samples. And so that's just, again, a use case there of a teacher doing that. But then job-specific assessments. So then we're going to break these things down and say, hey, what is the math needed for this job? What is the reading needed for this job? And how do we do that? And then we can tie this to post-secondary goals, and then a course of study leading up to that goal, using these assessments and the results from those assessments. And then finally, career planners. All right. And then some of these in here, and I'll share again some of these, all about social skills. So 1,500 videos of young adults in video modeling. One of the biggest call outs is from our teachers that use this, because again, right, they're in the day-to-day, right, working with students. One of the biggest call outs when we always ask for feedback is, hey, what can we do better? What is really good? Almost always the teachers say appropriateness of video. Like that's been like the main call out. The models are going to be 16, 18, sometimes 50 foot, because we're emulating the real world, right? We have all these different age range, but it's not juvenile. It's not cartoonish. It's going to be appropriate as we prepare individuals with disabilities for the real world. We don't want to say, hey, watch Bluey. And nothing against Bluey. I have young kids. Great. You can watch TV. However, for an 18-year-old student that I'm preparing for the real world, I'm not going to do that, right? And so that's what we wanted to depict too in our scenarios, is have these young adults in these various video modeling. So I'm gonna have you see this. Give me one moment. And again, I cannot share the sound. I know in Zoom you can. That is the one, Sheree, you were complimenting how cool this platform is. So one thing yet that they haven't done is allowing the audio to shine through, which is frustrating. So, but I want to share this short little thing here. So when we talk about things like self-awareness or resiliency or attitude or professionalism, right, in the workplace, we're going to have these video modules that are short and sweet, 30, 60 seconds, depicting these things. And I turn the closed captioning on because, again, you can't hear the audio. But the idea now is we're depicting a scenario of Paul walking into this library and being so excited, right? Hey, have you seen this book? Have you read this? And she's like, oh, no, I haven't. And someone behind is like, hey, quiet. I'm trying to read over here. And so obviously Paul's not understanding what's happening, right? He's not aware of his loudness in the library. So now we're going to ask the questions. At this moment, did Paul realize how loud? So yes, no. So again, tracking, scoring, documenting all that information to look at the end results and then help not only with our curriculum, but outside things that you are already doing. So, all right. So then let's skip back to my main screen here. Beautiful. Whole list of programs, some awesome things that I snagged off of Facebook, which is beautiful. And I'll pass it along to both Sheree, Matt, and Zac, or both, all three, Sheree, Matt, and Zac with that. And by the way, for you three, and I know we didn't practice much with this, but I love seeing the conversations too. So in the chat now, I'm going to be quiet. I want these three to kind of run with it. And then if I see some chat questions, I want to interrupt them. So make this interactive. Ask questions based on their feedback and what they're saying and what they're doing. And with that, go ahead, Sheree, please.
All right, perfect. Hi, guys. Good morning. Thank you, Art, for the invitation to be a part of this presentation. We love sharing what we are doing here in Northwest Louisiana, but also we are always interested in learning more. And, hopefully that is what we all get out of it, is learn what each other are doing and how we're implementing these different programs. I mean, I'm just looking over here at all the different titles, honestly, that we're all holding, and we come from lots of different areas, but also lots of different titles. Probably many of us are doing the same thing, but I believe at the end of the day, we all have a passion for helping young people, young adults with various disabilities, and finding their way through the world. So we are glad to hold hands with you guys through this process. So yeah, I had the privilege and honor of being with Art in presentation at the DCDT conference. And if you guys have not had the opportunity to go, this was my first year to go, and it was amazing, and I would highly recommend that. I'm not marketing for them or anything, but it was a great time. So I would encourage you to come if you're able. So I will also say that Zac and Matt here, they have been at this game a lot longer than I have. This is only my second school year in the program. Zac here, I'm going to go out and say that you're the founding father of our program here in Bossier. So I honestly feel humbled to even speak about this with him here. So Zac, please feel free to join. But this. With Matt and I currently working together, Zac did retire and leave Matt and I with this amazing program that he began here. And so Matt and I are doing our best to live up to that. We do, like I had said earlier, Matt is the transition coordinator for all services that we offer here. I specifically work with pre-employment transition services. So I did see many of you here on the right that are doing that as well. We work obviously with Louisiana Rehabilitation Services in order to make that happen. We are very invested in our community and our community with us. We have great partnerships with different businesses in the area that see what we're doing and speak to one another about what we're doing, and have just really taken our students and young adults in. And we've had great feedback with that. And then finally, we do use Conover, the Conover company and services, specifically that interest inventory that he spoke about. And also the behavior rating scale is built into that as well, which we'll speak more about that toward the end. So Matt, Zac, do you guys want to add anything to that so far?
Well, I'd like to give you a little background on our connection with Conover. Initially, we were interested in the longstanding success of the MECA initiative and the interest inventory system that they had developed. And so we did that prior to our development of our Pre-ETS model, where we were looking for help to have better interest inventory resources for our teachers, because that was part of the IEP. And it was a critical piece. We wanted to be more strategic in doing that, more scientific in doing that, and collect better data. And along the way, we recognized that they were working directly in the work readiness preparation that would serve as a critical piece of our relationship with our Louisiana Rehabilitation Services Pre-ETS program. Because what it allowed us to do was take an existing program where we were connecting students in the community with work opportunities. And then in the Pre-ETS model, the work-based learning experience piece needed to have data collection, needed to have direct training of skills, and it needed to have data analysis features in there. And so Art and all of the team at Conover were so helpful in helping us take an existing program and then enhance it to a point where we're now very interested in what you're doing to directly connect students leaving your secondary ed K-12 program and transitioning into VR and transitioning directly into employment. The Pre-ETS model makes that possible structurally, but I'm very interested in how you're doing it where you are so that we can keep improving our processes and practices.
Yeah. Can you back up a little bit more and just kind of share too and to tie it all together?
Sure.
Explain the need of why you saw the need to connect pre-employment transition services in the VR world to what you were doing in the special ed world in Bossier. And that was before a big, huge push with. Yeah. So explain that a little bit, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, there were people, and some of you on this webinar may have been involved directly in this, but at the theoretical level, it was recognized that, hey, we should be creating a stronger bond between K-12 and VR, and along with that, stronger bond between all of those domain areas that exist in the IEP. Because what we were recognizing from our experiences, failed and otherwise, was that success happened whenever that transition plan took life and it was really connected to actual human beings at post-secondary, in a workplace, in a community living environment. All of those features of the IEP, there needed to be institutions and human beings that were not only attending the IEP, but also, preparing that ramp for the student. That's always the metaphor that we use in Bossier, is that some students need a really short ramp. They just need opportunity to connect with employment and a little encouragement and, focus on where their strengths and weaknesses are. And hey, they're going to be great. Other students need, especially students with significant disabilities, they may need a longer period of time where that focus on transition is the lion's share of what happens. And Matt can speak to one of the features of the Bossier program that connected with post-secondary is now embedded in the vocational technical education programming in Bossier Parish Schools. So that CTE experience is available for students in 9 to 12, and then there's a special program called Pivot where students get additional time there. So Matt, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So also saw Jones' message about the Pre-ETS being embedded in the Conover.
Yes.
We actually deploy our Pre-ETS through our team. We operate under a third-party cooperating agreement with LA Rehab Services. And so that allows us to, this year, we've got 7 people on our staff. That allows us to reach all the high schools in our district and really kind of push out into the classrooms more and kind of get more kids than it was previously, because it used to just be 2 of us under that TPCA originally. But to get back to that Pivot program, so it's real quick,
Matt, before we move on, one call out here, that what you just said is so unique, that third party agreement. Can you explain that a little bit further about how that came to be and how that is structured? only because based off of feedback that we hear with our customers, and I'm sure the people in attendance here, as well as at DCDT, there was a presentation talking about how is Pre-ETS structured? Is it more contractual? Is there a gap in services? Are you embedded in the school district? And Sheree raised her hand. Yeah, embedded in the school district. And she was like, what, Sheree? How many, like one out of what? Yeah. One out of 100. It was like,
there was at least 100 people in the room for sure. Yeah.
So can you, Matt, speak to that a little bit about the structure of your program? Because I think that's important too. Again, outside of our Conover Online, outside of, but like, I think that's very important to kind of lay the groundwork for what Bossier said. Hey, this is important. And we're going to change structure to help these kids succeed.
So I'm going to defer to Zach on the beginning of the TPCA, that third-party cooperating agreement. But just to kind of let y'all know the structure we operate in is we are all housed technically at our technical school now, which is a huge, I think it's a huge deal because Zach worked very hard to get our foot in the door here with students with special needs because it was something that kind of took a lot of knocking to get through. And so we're really embedded here at the tech school. And so it's more centrally located. And so we have staff members. So we have four specialist teacher types that work with our moderate population. That's kind of the more self-contained classrooms. And as Zach said earlier, they use that longer ramp to employment and to independent living and transition into post-secondary. And then we also have two kind of dedicated to the generic SPED population. Those are the shorter ramp that we access them through a course code through Louisiana Department of Education. It operates like a work program. It's 2 blocks. We provide the transportation via the buses. We connect the students with internship opportunities at various businesses in the community, and those can be paid or unpaid. Typically, they start out unpaid, and we hope to work them into a paid opportunity. So to piggyback on that, we also, with our partnership with LRS, we can help make a business become a vendor of the state. And doing so, it's just a few little paper they fill out, the business goes to the state, and then they are now eligible to hire our students and get reimbursed for their wages, plus their taxes, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, all that. So it's another incentive for the businesses. They can kind of hire these students on a trial basis, and they've got 240 hours a semester to pay those students to be eligible for reimbursement. And so, even if we want to keep that student at the same place, we could switch positions, I believe. Zach, you can fact check me, but last I checked, you could move them. Say if they were working front of house at restaurant, they can move to back of the house the next semester, and they could be eligible for an additional 240 hours
within the same organization. So that relationship is there, but they're just doing their job.
Right. Yeah. So I just think like a fast food restaurant, they could be the front attendant, wiping down tables, sweeping, cleaning up, refilling drinks, and then the next semester move to the kitchen, and that would allow them to get reimbursed for another 240 hours. So that's another built-in incentive with LRS and partnering with them. And then, we're doing that in the school system, and really like Sheree's area of kind of expertise, I'll say Sheree, I don't want to speak for you, but is in that moderate population where we really work to identify students over the course of their high school career who may be candidates for that Pivot program. And Pivot is a program from 18 to 22 that they're housed at our tech school campus, and they're required to either 1, work an internship, or 2, take a CTE class here at the tech school. Ideally, we like them to do both. So we have some students that'll start off across the hall in business of retail, customer service, and then the other half of the day, they're at a job site working. And the goal is for all those students to either earn paid employment or transition to an independent living facility, or, whatever's next for them. We want to try to make that transition as smooth and easy as possible and assist the parents and the family. And I also see Joan said the contract is with the state. So the Louisiana Workforce Commission, Louisiana Rehab Services are kind of one of the same. But I'll kind of pause there and let Zach kind of explain how the TPCA came to be and what it looked like before maybe, and then what it looks like in its current form for us.
Yes.
And real quick, Zach, real quick before you do that, sure. And absolutely please do. But Joan, you had a question. Is the Pre-ETS built into Conover, or is it your state-specific program that you're referring to? A little bit of both. So what Matt was just referencing was their structure within Bossier and how they've kind of built this ecosystem with this partnership with LRS, Louisiana Rehab Services. So that is outside of, I had nothing to do with it. I'm not going to take credit. I didn't, nothing. That was all these three and other people within Bossier. How our tools fit in is, imagine you're a carpenter and you need to cut some wood. You need to drill and nail that stuff together with a compressor and a nail gun. That's what Conover is. We're the tool that they used and currently use to facilitate the Pre-ETS happening, right? The 5 Pre-ETS requirements, which I won't get into. You all know those already. Work-based learning, all that. So they use our tools to build the house, but they're the ones doing the work. They're building the house. And so I just want to share that, Joan. You had that question. I'm sure others did. We do not have a set, hey, this is Pre-ETS, this will solve magic pill your problems, but we have the tools that you can use to help facilitate that conversation with both parents, students, transitioning them into adulthood, all that stuff. So I just want to offer that clarification that that's kind of how and what Matt and these three are here for, is kind of sharing how that tool, our tool, Conover Online, is used, but they're the ones doing the work, right? Doing all that. So anyway, with that, Zach, go ahead, please.
I'd be very interested in seeing in the chat. I know some states and districts within states actually bridge from K-12 to VR, that VR staff are directly involved at delivering the Pre-ETS part and the VR part. And that's pretty interesting. And I'm kind of jealous about that, because your VR counselors getting to know students early on takes away a lot of the randomness or the introduction of gaps in service. And that is that's still a goal of Bossier Parish and Louisiana, to make that handoff more systematized and seamless. And so we're always in discussions with Art and the Conover team about, hey, how could we make that happen so that transition to VR level service, or in our state, Office of Citizens with Developmental Disabilities level service. You know, they're a major funder in Louisiana that is under our community services, human services district. So they folded some of those resources in, like they folded Louisiana Rehabilitation Services is folded into Louisiana Workforce. So structurally, the pieces are there. And in our district, we took on the role of delivering Pre-ETS services in the school district because we wanted to avoid potential gaps. Now, I know that in some districts, even in Louisiana, there are outside contractors who are providing the instruction for Pre-ETS, and that can be, very successful. But in that case, and in our case, that connection with the adult serving state services is critically important. So how we got started, real quick, before Pre-ETS became a part of RSA and Voc Rehab practice, there were forward-thinking people who went to that conference that Art is talking about and other similar conferences, and worked with the transition gurus and determined that it was really important to incentivize the development of post-secondary programs in all states. And so Louisiana has gradually been developing a network of post-secondary programs at colleges and universities. So that's adding another piece to the adult serving opportunities for students in our region. So we were involved in that work prior to Pre-ETS being available. And then, but fortunately that had gone on. So whenever Pre-ETS became available, we already had a mechanism, a third party cooperative arrangement, a contract between other entities. And the advantage to that was that it allowed the state, and shamefully, Louisiana is one of those states that does not pull down all the federal money that it should. It leaves money on the table. So it allowed them through these third-party cooperative arrangements to partner with school districts and colleges and other entities to hit that mark for Pre-ETS, that percentage of the budget they needed to spend on Pre-ETS.
15%.
And it had a guide for them, and it allowed them to meet that target, but it also allowed them to pull down more federal money and be more effective. I know Michigan is in the chat, and Michigan is a real leader. I'm curious to learn more about serving students until age 26 and the success you have there. I know that you have a really integrated model for adult services, and we're trying to develop a better model in adult services in our region and in our state.
Does LRS have a person dedicated to virtual schools or virtual options within Louisiana? Do you know?
I don't know specifically. Louisiana does have a network of virtual schools that are private virtual schools or charter virtual schools, and
Sure.
then there is one that is a state sanctioned school, as well as their specialty schools for students with significant disabilities.
Okay.
I was going to say too, guys, one of the things that she brings up here is that it's hit and miss if they attend IEP meetings,
Yes.
those from rehab
Yes.
services. And we do have similar, a similar thing happening here, just because they serve such a vast area. There's not one department per parish, and they do serve multiple parishes or counties, if you will. And so we sort of, as a team, are able to step into those IEP meetings and help facilitate those relationships. So we can kind of, I don't want to say speak for LRS, but make sure that the families and parents have information about LRS and other agencies that are around the area that they need to be connected with.
Love that. And Sheree, can you keep it rolling? How do you connecting what you're doing? You say here, partnerships within our community is paramount for our students. So
Yes.
Can you explain some of the scheduled opportunities for work-based learning, and then tie it into, I know you're very high on that behavior rating, and just speak a little bit on that as well, like how that factors into some of those, the success you've had within the work-based learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a variety of different opportunities for work-based learning within our department, depending on the student's needs, the student's scheduling. So some of our students that fall on the higher abilities, more independent students, are able to have a scheduled course that we call virtual workplace. And out of the 5 days a week, 4 days are scheduled class periods for work, and 1 day is a scheduled class period for in-class pre-employment transition lessons or community involvement as a group. So that's scheduled for approximately half the day. It's a 2-block period every day of the week, just depending on the day of the week as to what they do. And those partnerships, we really try to pair with their interests to the extent possible. So it's all about helping to try to find the student a really good opportunity. We wish that we could say we knock it out of the park on the first try. Some kids get in there and they're like, yeah, it's not for me. And so we search out other opportunities for them. So that is one piece. And another piece with the different abilities that primarily I serve, we have some students in there that can work independently, and some students that are better served in a group. And so they will go out in groups to places like Goodwill Industries, and they operate as a group, folding clothes, pulling hangers, those types of things. go out into the groups are a little bit more difficult to try to get placed because, there just aren't as many opportunities for them. But we've just had really good opportunities in all these different areas, not fast food chains, Goodwill, and we are constantly gaining new businesses. We're always out in the community and having conversations. We have a lot of community members with connections so there's always a back and forth partnership with them as well. Even our school system that kind of brings to mind here. That's another great group work site for our students is going into our elementary schools and some of those specialty classrooms there and kind of giving back to sometimes the classrooms that they were in whenever they were in elementary school. They also are allowed to do some office work, some working in the cafeteria. So we really are able to utilize our own locations as well. As far as the behavior, the behavior rating scale. So what we do within this is that, so of the people that we have on staff, we like to have two different perspectives at least. So say, for example, I will fill out a behavior rating scale on my observations of a student on the work site. And then another one of our team members will go out and visit multiple times and see those as well. And we have those two rating scales to see if they align, and if we're seeing the same things and what we can do to assist students in maybe some of those red and yellow areas and are able to compliment them on what they are doing well.
Yeah, sorry. I was delayed in the showing of the behavior.
No, not at all.
Can I answer Jeanette's question about virtual work?
She says,
place?
Is it possible to get more information about your virtual work day? She asks. Yes. So
they're in a purely virtual setting. Matt and I and Sheree can get you a copy of the curriculum for virtual workplace. We actually have a more not a real workplace kind of folded into the virtual workplace curriculum, but we can definitely share that with Art. I don't know if we can do it on the fly now, but
I can put it in the chat real quick.
Yeah, LDOE.
Love it.
Yeah. So that was a great find for us, and it was happening in the state, and I'm sure nobody on this chat has ever done this. You took something that was really for general ed and you co-opted it and used it for special ed so that you could gain an advantage for students, and that's what we did. So it did exist previously, but we took it and made it our own and used it in the district. I did want to talk about behavior ratings and the value of them. The example Art gave is one that we use as a benchmark example about the student that says he wanted to be involved in horticulture and landscaping. And with real experience and some assessment, we realized he enjoys, student with autism, he really enjoys watching people mow grass. And he does not want to get dirty or sweat or anything like that. But instead of saying, hey, well, this is not possible, it allowed us to really zero in on what is it about landscaping that interests him. What is it about that? And if we do that early on, we don't allow a student to kind of hold on to an ambition of, hey, I want to be an NBA star and I'm, 5'4" like I am. You're able to dig in and look at it objectively. What is it about athletics that interests this person? Is it the teamwork? Is it the common goal? Is it working in a group? Is it the social aspect? So
when you see a disconnect, and by the way, I usually stop and have 10 minutes of questions, but because we're interactive in the chat, I'm just going to keep it rolling. I'm loving this conversation. Right. We're going to keep it rolling until 11 Central, and you guys keep pumping questions in, and we'll address those. But I'm interested to know by you three here in the panel, if you will, When you see the disconnect of a job, like that example with an athlete and being, I want to be on the Pelicans or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you see it more so the student is misconstruing or not understanding or not at a level to understand quite what that career is, and they're kind of just purely interested based off other surface level things? Or is it more, do you see some parents kind of pushing, hey, I want my son or daughter to be this thing, whatever it is, and there's just a disconnect knowing both skill wise and interest wise that the student doesn't want to do that? Or is it a mix? Or where do you see that?
Yeah, I'll let Matt give plenty of examples because he has a unique experience here. But what I see is and saw, this happens a lot less than it did because of Pre-ETS, really, because transitions evolved over the last 20 years in the school districts and our focus on it. I see it less because we're beginning to get students engaged earlier with real work, real community experiences, access to community and technical ed, and Matt can talk about this, but we also have an after-school program for middle schoolers that's all about transition. It's all those domains that we're looking at in Pre-ETS, and that's not covered under our TPCA. We actually had to work outside of the TPCA and use money from IDEA and local funds in order to make that happen. And we don't have enough money in it. We never do, to do everything we want to do, but by braiding funds, we were able to complement our TPCA work with Pre-ETS, by having that ramp start earlier, and then some of the natural avenues into transition planning, like early access to community and technical ed programs, career tech ed programs, and community programs, and also summer experiences that are focused on career and tech ed and transition. So we were able to take funds from, the special funds coming in from COVID. And prior to that, way back in 2009, we started doing that with money that came from the Great Recession, the summer extra funds to schools. So we're always on the lookout for money that we can use to implement those theories.
And what is TCPA again? What is that acronym?
That's that third party cooperative arrangement.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. This is Sheree's doing, by the way. So I'm not an educator, so I can't say these things. So she said this as her, this is her comedic. I love it though, right? Like, hey, we can't improve. We have nothing to do. But in saying this and looking at this, one of the things, and actually Zac brought this up to me, was a SWOT analysis. And this is one of the things that he loves, and he shared with me that they did for transition planning. And I'm going to share this with you all. If we did this at DCDT, and it was kind of half and half, if you will. Had about like 10 people there, so 5 and 5 that were like, hey, I have done a SWOT analysis before, and then others are like, I've never done it. I don't know what that is. But what that is identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And by categorizing these things, as it relates to a certain topic, so for example, transition, we're able to then identify these things and identify certain opportunities, what are some threats and risks. So again, you're going to get this slide deck with this SWOT analysis tomorrow. That again, I just put together. There's no real, you can ask any types of questions, but for the strengths, what aspects of the transition planning process consistently lead to successful outcomes for students? Weaknesses, are there any gaps in communication or collaboration between the special education team and other stakeholders, such as employers, voc rehab services, or parents? Opportunities, what new community partnerships could enhance students' access to real-world work experience or educational opportunities? And threats, what risks do we face if we fail to adequately prepare students for life after high school, and how might this affect their long-term independence and success? So what's really great about this is if you really sit down with this and you analyze, you can take this, because what I'm hearing from both Zac and even Matt with the TCPA, and then even Sheree with the community connections out in the community and the partnerships with Goodwill and other retail stores and food service stores and things. you can't work in a silo, right? I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you can't just say I'm a school district and I'm going to do this, right? You have to have these partnerships and administrative support, right? Because that's obviously key, leadership support. But by sharing this SWOT analysis with leadership, one could argue that could help sell the opportunity to say, hey, this is, if you're feeling like you're not doing enough, this could potentially be the segue to build that ramp, right? Well, however long that student needs it, but you can build that ramp. And again, happy to share this. You're going to get this tomorrow for that. So one question is, we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to be cognizant of time, especially if those were off work or those are, in their planning period or lunch even or something, if you're out east, or coffee if you're in Cali, right, out west. But where are the largest gaps in your efforts to connect K-12 special education, which most are, but I saw some VR folks outside of K-12. But where are the largest gaps in efforts to connect K-12 special education and VR? So take a minute or so to type it in there. And if you don't type it, at least think about it. Some takeaway of where are the largest gaps. And sometimes it's like this, right? I'm the largest gap, or our school, and that's okay, right? But by identifying the issues is when we can start to address, okay, where's the root cause? Where's the problem? How do we fix these things, So, and anyway, as they're typing in there, anything else to add about anything I just said the last couple of minutes there?
Well, Matt has been directly involved in working with community leaders, elected officials, to, explore the gaps for his students who are leaving. It's like he's talk about creating demand, Matt.
Yeah, we met with some local politicians for the state, and we kind of told them we were creating a problem, albeit a good problem, that we've got our students who were connected with the LRS. We can connect them to VR, but there does become gaps on the adult side, because in the school system, we can provide the transportation. We can kind of serve as a temporary employment, agency, so to say. We can also educate them. We can help with clothing, shoes, what have you on the job site. We can help with all that. But on the adult side, there's a lot of community gaps where I think, and a lot of people just don't know about those gaps. And so they don't even know they exist. And that was kind of something our elected leaders, they kind of wanted some concrete numbers. And that's something that Sheree and I both said to me, like, well, if you build it, they'll come. Because, there's, probably 10, 20 years of adults out there that are looking for opportunities, but don't know about these opportunities existing, like possibly they do now with our program. Let's see the hit. I'm reading the comment.
And that's Michigan. MRS is Michigan Rehab Services. Yeah.
And we typically don't have that. I thought that would be a bigger problem when I came on, was getting the parents to buy in. But as Sheree can tell you, I've done it before we ever send home a packet to connect with Pre-ETS. We contact the parent via the phone, have a conversation, explain what they offer, what our program looks like, what our goals are, and kind of explain the connection with Pre-ETS to transitioning to VR is the goal. And in VR is where you sort of have that more financial assistance, and the parents kind of perk up on that. And so I don't think I've ever had anyone deny signing or not want to be a part of it. Everyone's kind of bought in.
I'll say with the permission form, I think maybe our equivalent of that, our permission to invite agencies form, is not just for our rehab services, it's for other agencies. We have a listing of those. And so that we encourage teachers to send out at the beginning of the year, not right before an IEP, but go ahead and make it part of that beginning of the year paperwork on whether or not they want those agencies to be invited. That way there is a little bit of time between beginning of the year and maybe that first IEP or that IEP for the year, that we can continue to make those connections and encourage families, to want them to be a part of meetings. And I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, but I know that from a coordinator standpoint, that is one way that we've tried to alleviate that issue.
And for the sake of time, real quick, Zach, because we're going to wrap it up. I apologize.
Sure.
I just want to be cognizant of that. Success stories. So if each of you, please, as we wrap up here, I know we're right at time, but each of you, please just share one. I'm putting you on the spot. We didn't practice this, but one success story from Bossier that you can share with this team to kind of send people off and a good feeling, and also that is possible type thing,
Hey, look, I'll go ahead and go first on that one. Yeah. My own child is a success story from this program. He began in this program as a student with Zac and his team at the time, moved on through a connection with Louisiana Rehab Services after, went to the local community college, received a certificate, worked in the local fire department, and is now working a contract job with an intellectual disability at the post office on our local Air Force base. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, we love
Matt. You want to go next?
Yeah.
Zach, go ahead.
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, I was going to say I've got a student. We had no confidence, very nice young man, but no confidence, couldn't get through even saying his name through our program as we kind of did mock interviews and whatnot. But he got a job at a multi-million-dollar manufacturing facility here out of Bossier that is employee-owned company, insurance, benefits, the whole gamut. And he's been there now 2.5 years and still employed, featured on the website. And it's just a great company, and they do on-the-job training, and he's just moving through the ranks, but I think he's 20 now. He's had the same job for 2.5 years, which not many 20-years can say, and it looks to be a career for him to last forever.
Flourish, man, that is awesome. Shout out to them.
Well, and the one general success story is how the career and tech ed school has embraced students with disabilities and has begun to put them in positions that we didn't even dream about. Students getting all of these industry-based certifications because we've gotten to know them over such a long period of time. They've had the opportunity, had the accommodations when they were, our responsibility, but they far surpassed, they're getting credentials in Adobe. 4 credentials one student has. Others have 2 or 3. Software development credentials from Microsoft and Google, and they're just doing things that we didn't think were possible. And there's one young student who is in the custodial department at that school and is employed by the parish. And he was one of those students that needed kind of a medium-sized ramp. So all the pre-ETS work and the work that was done even prior to his pre-ETS eligibility, helped us figure out this very complex human being was really interested in a lot of different things, and has been successful.
Man, that is awesome. And those are just three that you picked out.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, any last minute words of advice and or words in general, and then also this for you in the chat if you want to type in, and we're going to wrap this up and send you on your way to get back to it. But you three, anything else to add or last words here?
I would just like to extend the conversation out and the invitation for others, to keep in contact for us to all kind of collaborate and learn from one another on what we're doing. And if you guys are doing something that you think would benefit and vice versa, we'd love to share and maintain that communication.
Awesome. If you three wouldn't mind, I can add your contact information to the slide deck, and then people can reach out and shoot you an email if that's.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would say I'd love to keep that line of communication open. Like Sheree said, if y'all have anything y'all could help us, we'd love to try something new or come from a different angle. And if we can help y'all with anything or any questions, please reach out via email. We'd be happy to call, discuss, or help in any way.
And they put it in the chat for Matt and Sheree, and I will
Very
include
good.
it in the slide deck as well for
Yep.
you all. But yeah, well, thank you three very much for your time. I know
Thank you.
you're working. I see the classrooms behind you, Zach. I know you're working 37 different things moving. So I really appreciate you all.
Right.
And
Thank
you in
you very
attendance. Thank
much,
you so
Art.
much for your hour and your time this afternoon or this
Yep.
morning, excuse me, and have a wonderful finish to your week. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Bye now.
All right.